Arts Nexus is a capacity building agency working to grow creative people, communities and industries across far north Queensland. Find us at artsnexus.com.au, like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter and share your thoughts.
Hello, Jane. I'm very pleased to welcome you to Arts Nexus Creative Conversations with our new Zoom meetups, and really looking forward to have this chat with you. And so, yeah, welcome. And we'll get started with, because I know of Jane in your public role with the choir. I've started to meet you through Reach, but I'm really interested to know your journey to how you got to that point. So welcome, and I'd like you to start with just a quick overview of what you currently do, and then we'll get into some conversation about what led you to do that.
Sure. Okay. So currently, I run, well, there's a number of things I do. So it's hard. I guess that the first thing I put up there is I run a cappella singing classes, because I guess it's probably one of my major passions. So I shall put it up the front, even though the other things I do in my life are interesting and, you know, engage me as well. So I run classes. That's a regular thing I do, just one night a week at the moment. And I teach harmonising and repertoire work with a focus of songs from all over the world, because that's what I love to do. And so people who come and sing with me love that sort of stuff too. Otherwise, they usually go and find somewhere else to sing if it's not their cup of tea. So I also write my own stuff, my own arrangements, and I also arrange other people's songs. So some of our great contemporary singer-songwriters in this country especially, I love to have a play with some of their songs and enjoy making a cappella versions for my choir, which is great fun. So that's my that's the thing, that's the artistic side of my nature. And then I do have a drama side, so none of that's really working strongly at the moment. Mainly I'm a drama teacher, but I'm not teaching drama this year. I had a big load of drama last year, but this year is a bit quieter. But my main work is 3.5 days a week with regional excellence in arts and culture hubs, which is REACH for short, which is my, I guess, my bread and butter, and also a real joy to work with making a richer artist, a sort of arts tapestry for our part of the world. Is the focus of REACH, is to really make opportunities available for students, for teachers, and for young creatives who've left school to find their arts tribe, to find their the things that they're passionate about, and to have opportunities up here to extend themselves in those areas.
Yeah, well, that demonstrates the challenge I had trying to put one title beside your name of what you do. And even as you say in the a cappella harmony choir workshops, like world music, arranging, writing, like all of those are so many different hats that you wear. Where did this passion begin, from particularly a cappella world music?
Well, my singing, I mean, as a singer, I guess I was singing as a kid. I've got a grandmother who was an opera singer. My father had a lovely voice, still has a lovely voice, I'm pleased to say. And I've always, you know, I mean, since I was a kid, he'd have me on his knee going, Auntie Mary had a canary up the leg of a drawers, you know. So it was just like rhythm and singing was just the silliness of it was always part of my growing up. So I don't remember a time when I didn't have that happening in my life. So, you know, it was just always part of me. But I also grew up in England as a child, where we sang every morning, you know, all things bright and beautiful. We just sang. I mean, every morning you'd have the assembly, and the whole school would sing together. And when I went to high school here in Sydney, when I came to Australia when I was 11, I was lucky enough to have a high school where we had 3 different choirs, and I just went, oh, well, obviously I'll go and sing choir. That sounds like fun. So I just had, really almost by accident, and also huge, at the end of every year we would do a Gilbert and Sullivan. So there was always opportunities for being theatrical and musical at the school that I went to. So really blessed in many ways to have a very strong musical upbringing, I guess. Left school, somebody suggested a choir I could join, I did. But then I guess what your main question was, how did I get really interested in world music? And that was when I was, I'd been to university. So in my mid-20s, I went to the University of Western Sydney and did a Bachelor of Performing Arts, a theatre, direction, design degree, really fantastic degree. And when I left there, I joined a really brilliant a cappella choir in Sydney called Voices from the Vacant Lot, who sang original songs from all over the world. And that was probably my first ever, my entry into more multicultural songs. And we also had it was during the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when a lot of members from the African National Congress were traveling around the world trying to really talk about apartheid with everybody in the world. And the way they did that was they sang about it. They sang to, they taught songs wherever they went in the world. They taught songs. And we, I guess.
Well, hang on, we might explain before you go into it. So Jane's just had to move, and so you may notice that her background has changed. But so we will just pick up again from where you just joined a choir in Sydney and had discovered a different style of music. Was it that?
Yeah. So when I joined Voices from the Vacant Lot, they sang songs from all over the world. And there was quite a focus during that late 80s, early 90s on African music, yes, especially from South Africa. We had a lot of members from the African National Congress coming to Australia. They travelled all over the world, talking about the plight of Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
And they taught us many, many songs, and we did many concerts. Spent a lot of that time doing concerts where we were singing Free Nelson Mandela and singing some of these songs and being in our own way part of that movement to free him and to rid the world of apartheid. So it was a very strong time during that time with those people, and a really lovely family of singers. One of the main things that was sadness for me leaving Sydney, but still, it was a great time, great choir. It taught me things.
That is one of the traps, isn't it, of joining particular choral groups, but also theatre groups. You do start to feel very connected, and So what about that choir leader? I'm just wondering, you have a very infectious style of choir leading that even the audience they feel like jumping in and joining in. So I'm just wondering who that original choir leader was, and did they influence you and your thinking of how to share this music?
I'd say there wasn't a specific choir leader, but there were a number of people within the Voices group who would teach us songs. But really, as a model, I'd say it was a bit democratic. There were a few definite people who brought songs and who taught them, but we moved it around a bit. We've moved around who conducted, and then we also had lots of guest directors and people who came in and taught us. So we got to work with some fantastic directors. But I'd say that Lux Masala, who was one of the ANC guys who came in and worked with us, he was hugely inspiring to watch as a teacher. I guess, yes, you can't help but learn how to engage and to, to really kind of, you have to share the passion of the songs with your choir. You have to get them to understand why they're singing. You have to make them, and this is also one of my understandings as a theatre director as well, that you have to share the story. You have to honour whatever the story is of the song. And so it's quite a strong part of what I do is making sure my choir aren't just singing words or mouthing things. They're into it. They understand the message. Even if we are singing a Croatian wedding song or whatever, they still have to they still have to understand the essence of the song when they're singing. It's a really important part of it. So I guess that's the way in which my theatre training probably helps me in the way I teach. And yes, and makes me quite theatrical in the way that I teach, because I don't want to be bored by people who are boring on, you know, in that kind of role. So why would I do anybody else, you know? So I do like to leap about a bit and have a bit of fun with it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you had a lot of fun with music even as a child, and the fun songs that did you say grandfather and father both?
Yeah. Yeah.
Lucky you to have that, be so immersed as a young
I was very lucky
person in that. So then, well, have you ever been a professional musician through all of that? Have you sustained yourself with a career in music? Or?
Well, for about 10 years, I worked up here with 3 other women on. We were a quartet called the Frangipani Girls. So, but we were certainly not sustaining ourselves. Nobody was managing to feed a family on what we did with the Frangipani Girls. But we had a lot of fun. We used to get, we get paid to do gigs, and for that period of time when we were all able to focus on what we did, we really enjoyed ourselves, including going to Woodford Folk Festival, which was, I think it was still at Woodford at the time, as performers, which was a great deal of fun. So yes, I mean, there was that point in time, but I think for all of us, for anybody living, never mind whether you're trying to live an artistic life or whatever it is that you're doing, you have to make a living, and that sometimes takes you off in other directions or just leads you back on a path. So for me, it's always been arts administration. For example, when I first left university, having done 3 years of training, when I first left, I was pretty broke, really, and but I was lucky enough that I did a bit of an internship with Sydney Dance Company, and ended up working with the general manager there. She gave me a job as her personal assistant, and I worked there for a couple of years when I first left uni, and that certainly helped me get back on my feet financially, if you like. Plus, it was at the time when they were just moving into their new space down at the wharf, and I could see great potential for this space. Like, wow, this is a theatre space. It's a dance space, of course, as well. So I managed to steal the space occasionally and put on pieces of theatre and with friends while I was working there. So that was a big bonus.
Yes. So that's a little bit of a way that you've been able to sustain yourself and stay in the arts, is actually diversify and do different aspects of the job while still
administration. Yeah, I mean, and for me, that's my background. I've got a strong administration background as well. And funnily enough, even though I love being creative and writing songs, I also really quite enjoy putting together a really groovy spreadsheet, which is just as well, really, because you kind of, I have to do it even with my choir, the sort of having that business acumen, being able to actually, put together a good email campaign and create posters and keep a list of various things you need to keep a track of with the choir, for example, is all very handy. So my administration background's been a really important part, really, of the whole picture of who I am. Not as much fun necessarily as wandering around writing songs, but still important.
Yeah, well, how long has Woya been going for now?
We're up to, I was actually just looking at that today, because back in 2014, that's 4 years ago, I did a Petra Kucha, and it was 20 years of Woya. So there we go. So we're almost up to 25 years next year. Pretty amazing. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. That's a long time to keep a tribe together, let's call it.
Yeah, I mean, the tribe has changed. I mean, Woya as an entity is a performance name for the people who come and sing with me in my classes. So they are, and there are a number of them who've come and gone and reappeared. And I've got people who I know from way back when I first started teaching at TAFE in 1994. In fact, one of my first ever a cappella singing classes at TAFE, I had the oh my goodness, the Briscoe sisters all came along, and oh my goodness, that was so delightful to work with those beautiful voices. And how lucky was I to have those three gorgeous creatures in their teens at that. And I guess it's lovely now that I'm working at the moment with Mirindi in her role with Mirakai Dance Theatre. You know, so in my Reach job, so you know, there's lots of connections that I've had from way back that are still there. And certainly there's a big Woyaya family of people who come and go at various times. It's wonderful.
Yeah, we're very lucky to have the Briscoe sisters. Nothing like genetic harmonies. You can get, you know, harmonies are great no matter how you get them, but when genetic harmonies get together, there's just that resonance, isn't there?
Yes.
So, okay, I want to ask you a bit about this journey. So Sydney and the Sydney Dance Company. Oh my gosh, you know, wow. So how did you get to the regions, and obviously now stayed here for quite some, well, a couple of decades? How did that journey come about?
Well, after Sydney Dance Company time, I went back to the uni where I used to work. I did some tutoring. I did some guest directing with some of the students, which was, you know, fantastic. I just loved that work. But then in '93, my partner Bruce, who's a tropical botanist by training, with a passion for the mango family, the Anacardiaceae, he got given an offer he couldn't really refuse, which was a job in Cairns as an environmental scientist. And a couple of years before, we'd been on a road trip, the crazy road trip, where we'd actually been and visited up in the Cairns region for a holiday, and just loved it. And then when this opportunity came, we didn't blink. We just went. We were living in the middle of Sydney. We had a 3-year-old. We did love our life, but we also felt like we wanted a place that wasn't so polluted and much more nature. And it was such a good opportunity for Bruce for his work that we really couldn't refuse. And so we never looked back. We came and moved up to live in Kuranda, but Bruce works in Cairns, and really it didn't take me more than a few weeks to link myself in with some of the fantastic singing people in the Kuranda area. And before I knew it, we had a choir going. It was quite amazing, and really, again, lucky that I had some lovely connections that helped me to connect in, because that can be hard when you first move to a new place. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that, Jenny, because I imagine now that some of those very first connections have stayed all the way through, just knowing the nature of choirs and communities like Kuranda. So how have you, because you've got a unique perspective, because you can compare the life you had in Sydney and the opportunities that would have been before you. How has working in the region, like what is the difference of being located in the region versus located in a major city like Sydney?
Well, for me, really, I had never taught in Sydney. I'd never thought of myself as a choir leader in Sydney. I'd always been in choirs, but I'd never had the opportunity. And so many ways, when you go into the region, sometimes there's a gung-ho kind of, well, I can do it. Why not? I mean, I had a go, and I thought, actually, I'm pretty good at this. So sometimes being away from what you think of as being some kind of, you know, upstanding place that's got lots of very kind of high quality things or whatever, that in fact can be a complete illusion. But it can give you the courage, if you like, to have a go, to see what you can do. And so I just started teaching, and people started finding out about me, and I guess there weren't that many. I mean, we've got a number of really fantastic teachers up in here now, and that's brilliant. But back then there weren't really many other people except good old me, and people used to ask me to come, and I used to, for quite a while there, I would travel all over the place. I was going down to up to Mossman and down to Mission Beach and out to Atherton, and I would do workshops on the weekends. I was hardly ever home on the weekends for a little while there. And so while I could, before I started my teaching degree and became a teacher, that really wiped out that the possibility of keeping on that kind of level of energy. But I really enjoyed that chance to go, and I really got out into the region really, and met a whole pile of really fantastic people, and yeah, got a whole pile of people going on a singing journey, which was a good deal of fun. Yeah.
I think that's a great point you make, that sometimes just the gap that is there means that somebody fills it and you get to have a go at something you might not normally have had a go at. So in terms of that, who are the people that you work with up here? Who are your main comrades? You mentioned the Frangipani girls.
Yeah, it's just generally speaking the people you meet. I mean, the people you meet through your singing who come back to you, and it's all about the connectivity. So a friend who lived at the time up in Herberton and went, can you, this is way back, she now lives in Cairns, but who said, can I organise a workshop, and would you, come up and do a workshop with a whole bunch of people in Herberton? We're like, sure, of course. So it's really just about saying yes a lot, and then somebody else in that group will know somebody else who lives in Mission Beach, and then before you know it, people find out about you in the whole region. And they do a few, back then we do a lot of gigs, there'd be the Grafton Street Fiesta, and so there's every time you perform, somebody would go, wow, you guys are awesome, and the next thing you know, you've got more connections. So it sort of starts to grow quite naturally. And I'd have to say that really I don't do much marketing. Even now, I don't do much marketing. I have my networks, and obviously, if I was to today go, right, I'm not going to work for Reach anymore, I'm going to now want to teach, earn my living doing singing classes. Obviously, I'd have to really ramp up my marketing, and I would be able to do that, I'm sure. But the way I run it is sustainable, and that's the other really important word for me at this point in my life with what's going on. I have to make it into a way that I can sustain something that I love, that doesn't completely drain me or cause me to get the flu. That's not the fault of singing.
Well, but it's an interesting point too. Like, equally as you found an opportunity to jump in and have a go at choir leading, there's also participants that jump in and have a go because they go, oh, well, I want to do something. This looks like fun, I'll have a go. Whereas you may not have even got to meet them in a city context where they have so much choices. So, so Jadess, you've got a question?
Yeah, Jane, I was just going to ask, was the style of singing that you were doing in Sydney different to what the style was when you kind of came to Kuranda and Cairns? Was the singing in this region had the same flavour, or did you kind of find you sort of brought that to here and then kind of, taught it to them in a different perspective, or how did that sort of happen when you came?
Initially, I taught a lot of songs that I'd learned when I was in Sydney, with permission, of course. So a lot of my initial teaching of songs was, a lot of it was some of the beautiful African songs I learned, and other beautiful songs from places like Croatia or Italy or whatever I had, really, I would teach. And I also really admired the work of Sweet Honey and the Rock, who sing songs of protest. And one of their members put out a fantastic kind of set of cassettes, it was at the time, called Singing in the African American Tradition. So there were a lot of beautiful songs from that I was able to use as my initial work. And some of those songs I still continue to teach now. I learned a lot of beautiful songs from the kind of American Indian tradition, some really beautiful songs that are more in that kind of Mother Earth kind of tradition. So there's been a lot of that sort of thing that I've taught over the years. And I guess the thing that's changed probably more recently, well, not even recently, but when I started working with Frangipani girls, we started writing our own material. And so, and since then I have taught a few of I've adjusted from a quartet, 4-part harmony thing, sort of style. I've changed it to be able to be sung by a choir, and we've sung a couple of my songs with the choir, which has been a lot of fun to do things like, and they're completely songs that have been inspired by this region. One of them is called Walking Down the Rainforest Track, you know, so it's leave your worries in the city and never go back.
That sounds like an anthem, a personal anthem.
Yeah, it's a bit of a personal anthem, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and so I guess that, yeah, definitely some of the more recent things I've been writing have been definitely inspired by where I live, and some of the issues around where I live as well. In fact, I'm kind of mulling one at the moment, just a song that I really would love to develop to teach, I don't know, every single primary school child in the whole of our region. There will be a song about loving where you live, about treasuring the place you live in, treasuring the first peoples of this place, treasuring what we have, sharing what we have, being compassionate to those who are fleeing, you know, problems in other parts of the world, or even in their own part of the world right here. How do we, you know, get back to those kids, and how do we, I don't know, I want to see every single primary school kid in the whole of our region singing together at the Munro Mountain Park, or somewhere in Mossman, or somewhere, you know, that, or all over the place, to show that we understand what we have to do and what our responsibility is to look after this very, very precious part of the world. You know, so I just like to, I guess that's one of the things I'd love to see happen. So that inspires me to write as well. Yeah.
So that goes back to really your very early days, you're saying, with regards to the early protest songs and the way that music does bind us together in a magical way. There's just something that happens, isn't there, especially when you sing as a group.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think that's a very insightful thing that comes out of these conversations that we're having. Those very early experiences tend to, whether you set them aside and come back to them or carry them all the way through. So in the work that you do at Reach, which is also an amazing program that has quite a big impact on the people that are involved in it, how do you, as a practitioner, arts practitioner, get to share that knowledge now with young people?
It's very practical, really, in my particular role, I guess, especially because of my particular love for theatre. I'm really keen to make things happen in the theatre area, and what I find is that because of the team we have at the moment, which is just the most amazing team of wonderful people who work for Reach, they will have specialty areas that they're really keen on, and that's and you have to work with whatever passions available. You have to. There's nothing else you can do about that. But so we get a lot of visual arts is really a strong area of reach, if you like. And so I find that obviously I'm supporting that all the time, but I'm also finding ways to go, okay, so Queensland Theatre are coming into town. How do we make something happen that'll, you know, engage everybody? So we're always looking at ways to not only give students a chance to extend themselves, they're already getting it. I mean, they're already humongously lucky, you know, at high schools these days. You have a really fantastic range of opportunities to be involved in the arts at high school. Not so much primary these days, but high school, pretty much so. But even so, and those teachers do a fantastic job, but any chance you can get to make that even more rich, make that a more rich journey, giving them real life examples of working with a director who's coming into town, and there's a production happening and they get to see a show and talk to the cast, and, you know, this is all just win-win. So it's more about trying to network as much as I can within the time frame that I have across all the art forms that I'm kind of trying to run projects in. So it's really about, and also the other wonderful things that come up, like there'll be NIDA scholarships. So there'll be a chance for a young person to get an opportunity to do NIDA workshops for free. That's brilliant, you know. So putting all that information out there and just making sure that students and teachers know what's available, that's our focus really as much as possible. To a certain extent, we can lead horses to water. We can't make them drink. We do our very, very best, but teachers are very, very busy people. So are students. And, you know, we're always looking for ways. We're always refining and trying to find out, how do we connect? How do we make this as easy as possible for people to connect with? You know, how do we really share the love too? You know, it's not just about, you know, one school. It's about kids from everywhere. It's about one kid from Mariba turning up to a workshop because he really wanted to know about such and such, and meeting all these other kids from other schools who are just like him. You know, these are fantastic opportunities for people to find their tribe and to understand that there's a place for them in their arts field right here. That's what we want to try and develop as much as possible. You know, just how do you deepen that? How do you keep on making them more opportunities for those connections to happen? It's a question. It's not something we have solutions for. Sometimes it's very hard to connect with people, but do the best you can. Well,
and as you say, and people's needs are different and change, so it's very hard to find a one size fits all. No such thing. That's right. And so I wonder, Reach, as with Arts Nexus, where do you see these agencies? How do we fit in the general sector? What are your thoughts? Well, you're a practitioner, but you also work in an agency. So
I do work in an agency, and Reach is Education Queensland funded. So and that's, I should say, majority of our funding is from Education Queensland. So we are bound within that Education Queensland system. It has positives because, of course, it means we can get our networks really clearly together as far as making sure we know who are all the drama teachers, who are all the visual arts teachers, who are all the dance teachers, having networks with them, being in contact with them, making sure they understand that we're just here to help make groovy things happen. We can't always come up with the idea. Sometimes there's just a fantastic idea brewing somewhere, and that person just needs help to make that fantastic idea into a reality. Then that's what we're here for. We're just logistics. It's just like, give me a spreadsheet. Let me know. I can do that stuff. You know, let me work out the venue. Let me do the negotiations for the blah. So just to make those things possible is what Reach really is focused on half the time, is to make things possible. So in terms of the Arts Nexus, to me, your next step, our focus initially has always been secondary students as our main focus. How do we help secondary students and secondary teachers with professional development or artistic development? Let's be as clear as we can with that. Part of our funding, though, we also use to trickle back and reach back into primary, where we give opportunities for students in primary to find out who they are artistically, to give them chances to be involved in a visual arts workshop or do some choric speaking or whatever it might be. So there's opportunities that go back that way, because they're the ones, they're coming through into the high schools. You want them to actually understand themselves as an artistic being. They need to have a starting point. So that's our second reach, if you like, backwards. And then only in the last couple of years, we've had a third reach, which has been forward, where, you know, at the end of grade 12, what happens to all those great students we've had on our email lists? Where do they go? What happens? And we've now tried to keep in connection with them, so we can and offer them to join us for other workshops that we've organised for secondary students. They can still be involved. So between the ages of 16 and 25, they're invited to stay connected with their arts practice. And that stops that kind of falling off the edge thing that happens sometimes when students leave school. They have a rich arts life at school, and then suddenly it's just all gone. So that's the reason why we tried to move forward into that area. And that coincided with Cairns Regional Council asking us to submit, which we did, a proposal for engaging with young creatives, and that's something that we're still in the process of doing now. Finding how to do that, how to engage with these young creative people, how to connect with them, considering they're a very, I call them butterflies, they're a very movable bunch, not surprisingly. They're going off to university, a lot of things are going on in their lives. So that's a process that we're going through now. And of course, therefore I see Arts Nexus is the rest of us, the adults, the grown-ups, if you like, or whatever. Not that I think we're all necessarily very grown up. I certainly don't think
Like
that
to
way.
know, yeah, I was wondering when you get to grow up.
Yeah, not quite sure yet either. But so we, I mean, Arts Nexus is obviously looking. It has always been, and you've had a very. There's been a bit of a flow and an ebb and a flow in the history of Arts Nexus that I've been aware of over the last, I don't know, 20 years, I suppose. From way back in the beginning, where I remember being asked to write theatre reviews by Eve Stafford
That's
for a
right.
magazine, and taking that way too seriously at the time. Not that I look back, but making myself no friends, I don't think at all in that process. But you know, through to where you are now, it seems to be very much about strongly advocating for the arts in this region. I can see that you're doing that, and it makes sense to me that we should look at ways in which we can make things better for you, for Reach, and more importantly for the young creative people who live in this town. That's
Yes.
To me, there is no other agenda. It's not political. It's just we're here to make things better, make the arts fabric of this place the grooviest, and anything I can do to help make that happen is fine by me.
Yes. Well, we kept hearing the word at the recent Artland conference that both Jane and I found ourselves at, which was quite amazing to go all that way and you know, find some people from down the road. That was great. And yeah, the word ecology came up a lot over the last couple of years, that we all understand now that it's so important to have, even if you don't engage with each other's agencies all the time, it's so important to accept who you have got in your world and support them where you can. I think that is definitely the take-home message for me that I got from definitely Artlands, but always, yeah, support who's doing what they're doing, and especially for the young people, they need those pathways for sure.
Collaborating and working together in a
That
small,
sounds like a song.
doesn't it? We live in a regional area. There's not a lot of money around. There's not a lot of resources around of various kinds, and yet I watch some of the tertiaries clamoring for space and I think, really, you ain't doing anybody any favors. Just be good at what you do and share, and let's make it good for everybody. If we all just went, how about you do this and I do that, you know, and we talk about what we're doing and we keep each other honest, then you don't have to fight. Silly. It's very silly to fight. In a tertiary education arena in particular, it's very stupid to fight in a small regional area. You know, okay, if you're in a big city, you want to go to Sydney and Melbourne and fight about who's going to have the biggest campus, whatever you like, but it's just, it doesn't do anybody any favors. So yes, the more that state government, local councils, agencies who are on the ground, tertiary education institutions, the more that they can all work together, sit around a table and keep their eye on the prize, is about the people, not about their own little nest. Hallelujah. That would be that's my song. Keep your eye on the prize.
So I think that, you know, I was going to ask the question, but you seem to have answered it. It preempted me that, you know, what you particularly want to share. But I think that's a great take-home message, you know, just to collaborate and share what you know. It is the way of the world and the way we're moving forward. So
Totally. Including things like my singing classes. I always let people know if I hear about some other groovy singing group that's happening, or a new teacher who's come to town. You know, I'm not trying to create some kind of, you know, power base. It's like the more singing, the better. You know?
Yes.
Let's
It
all
changes the world.
It does.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you so much, Jane. I learned quite a lot about your journey and who you are and how you got to where you are today. And I think that's a bit that we often forget. You know, people did have a journey in life before they moved to the region, but then you commit to being here. And thank you. Thank you for the gift of music that you've given, not just the people that enjoy your choirs, but those that get to listen, like me.
Thanks.
Oh, one day I will join, I promise.
Please do.
Well, I'm a little bit more known for my tambourine playing than my singing, but you know, just in case you ever need to audition a tambourine player, let me know.
I'll let you know. Absolutely.
In fact, I'm not even a tambourine player. I'm a timbrel player, to be precise.
A what player did you say?
Timbrel. Timbrel is different than a tambourine.
Okay, cool. All right.
A little known fact.
I shall have you along and we can have a little listen to your timbrel playing.
No, it's been some time. I have to dust it off, but yeah, indeed. Yeah. So thank you again, Jane.
Thank you, and thanks to Jess. I hope I answered your question okay.
Did you have any other questions, Jess? Was anything else come to mind as a young person making their way into the arts world?
No, I thought it was an interesting conversation. It's always, as you just said before, it's always interesting to see how people, you know, started off somewhere else and then brought all of their skills and something, you know, to another region. It just kind of enriches our culture no matter what sort of creative field that they're in, which is always great to see.
Yep, we just should take it all and go, yep. More of that, thank you.
More of that and more again. That's it. That's a t-shirt.
Arts Nexus is a capacity building agency working to grow creative people, communities and industries across far north Queensland. Find us at artsnexus.com.au, like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter and share your thoughts.